think that's very interesting what you just said about the idea that your mother was secretive. Like, I never had a discussion like that. I do remember when I started to develop, I mean, I didn't go very far, but I remember like sitting, like my sisters were sitting around a table and I came in and like, you know, one of those little t-shirts and they were like, ooh, she's gonna get her period soon. Cause I had what, you know, the one lump, the one,
Yeah,
just the one. And you're like all summer long, it was like bad, you're like, oh, I got the one lump. But that was basically it. Like, and then I was left to my own devices, you know, to figure it out. Luckily I had sisters, you know, so I knew how to do everything. But did you have a similar experience about that, or was it
nothing
discussed?
was ever said, not even amongst the sisters. Like it was just, there was no discussion. Anything that I learned about any of that, I learned just on my own, just being out there. It was never, ever, nothing about any of it.
And you too?
My mother sent us to my grandmother, who would say anything. She was so graphic. I was like, oh no! Don't say that!
I don't want to hear it!
Yeah, so we would have...
Isn't it funny? It's either the extreme, nothing or too much.
Yeah, my mother would say nothing. My mother could not. She was very uncomfortable. Sex, body, period, all of that. But my grandmother would get right to it. Yeah.
Did you have that same experience?
I did. My family's very closed. Unfortunately, my adolescence was a lot different from our girls.
Right.
My mother was very sick for years, so we didn't have that close connection.
Right.
You know, I spent a lot of time with my grandmother or with an older cousin, but no, I never received that family bond talk. You know, it was everything I learned was outside of school with my friends or anything like that. But
isn't that, it's so bizarre. It's like we're raised like we're wolves or something. It's like
Yes.
this instinct
Yes.
carries you to that. Like, man, that's kind of cool though, because genetically you go like, oh, you could actually survive because you figure it out.
that's right.
I mean, I'm not saying that's a great thing, but so so going back to me. So first I wanted to look like my mother. And then I started to dance, and then I started to want to look like my aesthetic changed. And so then there were all these outside influences that I wanted to look like. Did that ever happen to you? Like, was there a shift? Because obviously you're raised in your household, especially if you have sisters or aunts around, that's the first thing you see. But do you remember when it changed and how it changed?
I wanted to look like Beverly Johnson.
Oh, she's
Remember
fabulous.
Beverly Johnson?
Yes.
Like, she was one of the first African American cover girls, and she was on the cover of Glamour. And I used to like read all the articles. Okay, she's 5'8" and she's 135. That's what I'm gonna be.
Right.
Yeah.
So Beverly, I mean, maybe Diane Carroll was another African American woman that was like sort of famous,
Older and
you know.
fabulous. But body image, it was
That was Beverly Johnson. Did you have one?
Actually, for me, it was my mom always.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it always stayed my mom. I just thought like she had this like, light around her, and every time I saw her, my eyes lit up, and I just thought she was just the most beautiful. She was fit. She had, everything about her was what I wanted to have, and it stayed that way. Even I started dancing at a young age, and it still didn't even change then.
Wow.
It didn't
Cool.
even change then.
Did you have one, or two, or six?
It's funny, with me, I can remember in grammar school, I wanted to look like one of my classmates, which will remain nameless.
Okay.
Then in high school, for some reason, I was just focused in sports, which was basketball. I didn't have an issue like in high school when it came to
Right.
image. But it's funny how in grammar school I did, because I was flat, skinny, And then when I got to high school, I don't know, I was popular. I was in the first freshman in varsity basketball. So that was my focus.
So it went to a different.
It went to a different level.
So did you start to look at your body as what it did, as opposed to what it looked like? Like the idea that I can play sports, as opposed to like.
I think that's what helped. I was so focused on, the sports that it wasn't an issue anymore. And that's what helped me.
Right, that's interesting.
That's what helped me. But in grammar school, I was like, oh my God, I felt like such a peon, because everyone was developing the chest, the thighs, and I just always felt like so insecure. And
It's horrible.
It's horrible.
It's hard.
Horrible. Oh God, I don't even want to think about those things.
Did you ever want to look like somebody besides?
Not anybody in particular. I was thrown in ballet from 6 years old, so my idols were everybody in the dance company,
Right.
you know. So I'm gonna look like that, and I'm gonna do that. So I just grew up to know a healthy body from a dancer's point of view.
What's interesting is we're all women of color here. I did try to get some white people. They didn't come. Just so you know, I'm all for diversity. Just didn't work out that way. But for me, it's interesting that because I was a ballet dancer specifically, my images became, I really needed and wanted to look like a very prepubescent, flat-chested white woman, very hungry white woman. That was the aesthetic, and it didn't match anything that was in my household, and my people didn't even quite understand my preoccupation with that sort of thing.